Voto Latino, and Hugh Hewitt, host of the Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network. Hugh, let me go to you, and I don't know if you tapped into our conversation before the last commercial break, talking about Republicans not necessarily surrounding the president and having his back on this issue of election fraud that he alleges. What are your thoughts about that, and how's this going to play out?
Well, Lester, within the hour of our going on the air, I spoke with a senior member of the House Republican leadership, and they are very supportive of the president, but I want to explain why that is. They have made extraordinary gains in their views. NBC is projecting 209 Republican seats. They believe they could have 212, maybe 214. Mike Garcia in California, 25, has just moved ahead. And they are very, very grateful for what Chuck pointed out. The president mobilized the base that turned out to elect numbers that they were not expecting. And the Democratic caucus, by the way, had a very contentious call today. They have a civil war on their hands within that caucus. So they are supportive of what he's done. They're extremely supportive of his message that if you listen to the entire presentation the president made this afternoon, or at 6:30 p.m., is that 2020 is a year that is going to live in polling infamy. It is suppression in the eyes of the Republicans, and they agree wholeheartedly with the president that the polling errors, which were systemic errors that are built-in bias apparently now, suppress their votes, suppress their contributors, and suppress the ability to win even more seats. So they support the president's meta messaging, not just for this election, but for the coming election, that big money and big media is against the party.
How does that all?
Do not.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I speak for our polling a minute here? And I understand I understand he was talking about what the president's supporters believe. But I can tell you about our polls. There is nothing about that. Nobody is intentionally weighting them incorrectly, whether it's on the NBC Wall Street Journal or Marist that we have used as polling. And I just want to get that out there. I understand that people want to make some of these accusations. I know Hugh's not making that accusation. Hugh, I know you're not. But I do want to just clarify there that that is not – I have yet to work with a polling firm that has acted or done that.
Well, be that as it may, Hugh, I was just going to ask you about sort of the intellectual inconsistency there, for lack of a better way to put it. I mean, you're saying the polls are wrong, and therefore they've suppressed and depressed your voters, and your voters didn't turn up because they were too depressed about the polling that said you were behind. Well, that's one thing, but he's saying, but also there was fraud. I mean, which one is it? Because saying that the polls depressed his voters so they didn't show up is essentially acknowledging that he appears to have gotten fewer votes.
Well, Secretary Clinton said to me in an interview after her loss, you can hold two thoughts. There can be both systemic bias in the polling, which is not intentional, and Chuck is right. I don't believe it's intentional. I believe it's systemic. That is the same argument that goes to other issues as to whether or not you intend to be wrong or whether you are simply wrong. This year was the worst year in polling history with the most significant effects. They are not, however, agreeing with the assertion that fraud has been proven anywhere, but they are open to it, and they want the spotlight to be thrown on irregularities and especially on non-transparency. And the president mentioned that this afternoon as well, or at 6:30, that in Philadelphia, the Republicans won a lawsuit because the transparency was not being forthcoming. There have been not just anecdotes, but a fairly long string of anecdotes about lack of transparency.
Fair enough. Isn't there a difference, though, between saying we should have transparency, we want to make sure the votes are counted and counted fairly and only legal votes, and saying I was cheated and I really won this election? I mean, there is a big, vast chasm of difference between those two statements.
He didn't say I was cheated and I won this election. He said they're going to fight to make sure that every legal vote is counted. And as the leader of a party that depends upon honesty in vote tabulation and polling, he's being applauded by Republicans. So I just wanted you asked me about what do the Republicans believe. They believe he is fighting a very good fight. They will not agree with every assertion he makes. I certainly haven't seen any evidence of fraud, but I have seen evidence of systemic bias in polling, not intentional, but it's overwhelming, and it does suppress Republican turnout.
Let me just say a word about the transparency issue, because the Philadelphia County Board of Elections put out a statement tonight saying that the difference in their argument was between whether the 19 Trump campaign people, the poll watchers, they were inside, they were not outside, whether those 19 people could be